Hey everyone, it's Ken. Bit of a different style of video. Traditionally, I would just have some footage in the background and narrate over it, but today we actually have some data provided by Behaviour. If you don't know, every now and then Behaviour releases some stats from most used perks, most played killers, and win rates and stuff like that. So I want to make a quick little video just discussing this and kind of seeing how the pick rate will reflect how we generally play the game. So some things we want to keep in mind before we start. Things like when this was recorded is really important. This information was recorded and given to us a few hours ago, but all the information was pretty much recorded from, I believe, December 30th to January 29th, but not January to now. So some stuff isn't just included at all. So stuff like Alan Wake's chapter, and that includes Onryo's rework, Billy's rework, and all that stuff, will of course not be included, which will of course affect some kill rates and also pick rates. And there's two other things that will affect this entire information, and firstly is that Chucky was the newest killer at the time of this data recorded, meaning that he will obviously be near the top, if not at the top of the pick rate. And lastly, but certainly not least, all this information is gathered from every single walks of life when it comes to MMR. Doesn't matter if you're Art Starva, JRM, fucking anyone else, or you're just someone who just picked up the game on the Switch, you will be contributing towards this data, and generally players are not high MMR. So all information will be linked in the description below if you want to go look at it. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Oopsie. Sneezed. Okay, so yeah, here's information, and stuff for Survivor perks. The most used perk, without a doubt, there is no doubt in anyone's mind, is obviously Windows of Opportunity. Windows is just simply the easiest perk to use. It's the most new player friendly. It is probably the most useful if you're solo queuing. You'll know when certain palettes are really strong and been dropped, like for example Shack palette and some very much of a god palette like on Gideon Meatpack Factory and stuff like that. Something you will also notice is that things like Adrenaline, Lithe, Resilience will of course always be near the top, but generally I'm kind of confused why Lithe is up here so high. Traditionally, you would see, for example, Sprint Burst up here, which it is at number 7. But personally, in my games, I see a lot more Sprint Bursts. Probably not more than Adrenaline, but I definitely do see a lot more Sprint Bursts in here. So that is something to keep in mind. Resilience is very good for vault speed builds. If you're very confident being able to get fast vaults, it will be very useful, and you'll notice a difference. Deja Vu is yet another perk that I think is just simply new player friendly. So of course, new players are going to obviously gravitate toward it. Self-care, I rarely see self-care in my matches. It's probably just a me thing, but I don't see this that often, honestly. It comes out every now and then. I don't see it too often, but yeah, there's that. And obviously, we already covered Sprint Burst, but of course, Dead Hard is another perk that is, of course, going to be always near the top. It's not as powerful as it used to be, but having Endurance and normally Exhaustion perks are somewhat up there. Yet again, Bond is yet another perk that is generally good for new players and solo queue. Being able to know where your teammates are is really important, and the same goes for Kindred. Alright, now we're on to killer perks. Something you will notice is that pretty much all of them, with some few exceptions, are slowdown perks. Pop is debatably one of the strongest ones. If you ask me, I think Pop is still one of the most useful ones, but I do think some other ones have been affected slightly. Sloppy Butcher is not only a kind of, not new player friendly, well, kind of is, but it's also a very good way to add natural slowdown. Corrupt will just simply slow down the entire match no matter what. Lethal Pursuer to get into a chase as quickly as possible is usually used on most killers nowadays. Usually being able to get into a chase and get it down within the first few minutes of the game, if not a few seconds, is always really good to do. But Bamboozle is really odd if you ask me. I think Bamboozle is just kind of weird. I do think there's plenty of builds where you can use it very effectively. I think some loops become infinitely weaker for the Survivor if Bamboozle's in play, stuff like T&L walls and a few others. But generally not so much here. Here comes the next one, which is the most picked killers, and like I said, of course, Chucky is number 1. Like I said, it is mainly because he is the brand new killer. He's of course going to be somewhere near to the top of the totem pole. Something you will also notice is that a lot of newer player-friendly killers that come with the game will of course stay near the top. Killers that are either really powerful by default or are also very, I guess you can say, just simply available to new players. Stuff like Wraith, Huntress, Trapper, Nurse. These are all available to new players and generally provide a very good experience. But like I said, new players have access to them and veteran players love them. I do think that Legion is a very interesting pick, but he's very much a very easy style to play. I won't say if I experienced a lot of legions during this time, but like I said, all this information is recorded across MMRs, so naturally a lot more information is going to come from lower MMRs and higher MMRs. Wesker is probably one of the most well-known licenses that people point to of why they came to DBD. Something you can't really say about Chucky, for example, or several other killers, maybe Michael Myers, you can all say about him, is that a lot of these licenses didn't get new people into the game as much as the Resident Evil chapter did. Of course, the first one with Nemesis, of course, brought in some new players, but I believe the second chapter brought in a lot more from the Resident Evil series. The rest right here are similar situations where these are simply just killers that a lot of people enjoy due to the idol of them, stuff like Michael Myers, or his ability just to immediately just and you're gone. Nurse's overall strength will really influence people from picking this character. Same goes with Blight, yet another reason. And of course, Ghostface is yet another big icon, so he's of course going to be high up in the totem pole. And here comes information that you do not like to hear. For new players who are questioning what I'm going to say about this, it's actually pretty simple. Yeah, Skull Merchant number 1. So for players who are wondering why Skull Merchant is such a high kill rate, it's pretty simple. Nobody wants to play against Skull Merchant. So two things may happen. They just simply they're gone. They themselves get killed on hook so they can go on to the next. Not a lot of people want to play against this killer at all, and I don't blame them. It's probably one of the most poorly designed characters in the entire game. I do think utility-based powers are a great idea. Just the way it was done in the Tools of Torment, I believe it called, was the chapter, was just not really well done. Another character you might be kind of surprised to see here is Onryo. Onryo, I'm not too surprised. It's the same situation as some other killers that are on this list. A lot of this is just taken from a lot of MMR, so you just simply don't know how to play against them. I can go through all these characters of how it's kind of difficult for new players to play against. Onryo, Cenobite, Freddy Krueger, I think Dredge is another character in the Spirit. Generally, these are very hard characters to play against. So since this is taken across all MMRs from low MMR, new players, all that shit, they're going to blow up the numbers astronomically. So that's why characters that have very complex ways of playing against them naturally are much higher up there in the kill rates. Something to keep in mind that Behavior does want to keep the kill rates roughly around 60%. One thing you can say about all this is that pretty much all these characters who are considered top 10 don't really break the 70% kill rate. Skull Merchant's the only character to get 270, and that's it. All these other characters, even number 10, is simply just 60, which, like I said, I think is a really good choice to make it so they balance for 60%. But still, looking at just stats isn't the best. If they simply look at some of these killers and say, oh, well, Pig has a 60% kill rate, so we can probably tweak her a little bit and nerf her into the ground. The same go with the Shape. The Shape naturally has Tombstone, which astronomically blows up his kill rate. Infinite Tier 3, Scratch Mirror, all these things are very kind of annoying to play against and balance. All these things will normally rise or increase the kill rate, causing stuff like this. And this right here is the survivors, I believe. I believe this right here is the survival rates, meaning you escape. And this, I believe, is group size, meaning if you're playing solo, 2 people, 3 people, and a 4 stack. You'll notice that all MMR is generally either roughly the same or lower by a small margin. The only exception is solo play. 2 survivors does seem pretty even, roughly a 40.10% escape rate, which I think is fine. The same could be said with this. The 3 stack is a bit higher, and also the same exact thing with 4 stacks. Generally, these are a lot more than the low MMR or overall MMR, because these high MMR players are able to work together in order to escape a lot more commonly. So yeah, that is just some stuff I wanted to show you. I think this information is really good for you to know, as it can kind of influence the way you play the game. Now, like this information is said, it's taken from the overall average of either specific MMRs with the last bit of information or overall from all MMRs. Meaning this won't reflect every single game you have. If you play Skull Merchant, you're not guaranteed a 60 or 70% kill rate throughout all your matches. You're not really going to see that, but it's just overall what we see and how some things should be shifted. But I don't think as many people know that Behavior recently has been doing a pretty decent job of not using these stats of how they balanced things. In the past, they've done that really, really badly, where they have looked at stats, kill rates, pick rates, all that shit, and let that alone influence balance choices. And that's when we get really bad cases when debatably or not debatably weak killers are nerfed even further, and it's just not fun to play them at all anymore. And they say, oh, well, we dropped their kill rates to what we expect. But the thing is, though, nobody's playing them, so their kill rates don't really shift all too much. Yeah, like I said, this is a different style of video. I might do it in the future when it release more information, and I'll probably do a stream highlights when they release the PTB for the new Survivor Killer and map coming on the 20th of this month. That falls on a Tuesday, and like I said, I'll be making a video on that. I will be live later on tonight, and roughly about an hour after this video goes live. I hope you all do enjoy this video. Without further ado, have a nice rest of your night, morning, day, whatever it is for you. Bye.